1971. An ancient tomb was unearthed, and inside was a Taoist treasure trove of lost technologies, lost ideas, and lost knowledge. Today, let's talk about this tomb and the Taoist truths that were dug up. It all started with a so-called madman. He claimed that his stargazing had revealed that a 1,000-year-old tomb was about to emerge in the city of Changsha. And sure enough, not long after, strange ghost fires began to appear from the ground. In an air raid shelter that was under construction, blue flames suddenly shot up half a meter high. An army officer dismissed it as superstition, saying it was probably just an old fuel depot left over from the Battle of Changsha in 1940. But as they were about to dig further, the director of the local museum arrived. He explained that Changsha was famous for its ancient tombs and had long been a gathering place for tomb raiders. He thought the madman might actually know something. The director mentioned that this phenomenon of fiery eruptions from tombs was recorded in an old text, which described how a group of tomb raiders in the Yuan dynasty were all incinerated when a blast of flame erupted from the tomb they were looting. No modern archaeologist had ever seen such a fire pit tomb. It turned out that a renowned archaeologist, Mr. Xianai, had surveyed this exact spot 20 years earlier and concluded it was a Han dynasty tomb. This meant the tomb was over 2,000 years old, yet it had somehow remained perfectly sealed. Now that the seal was broken, it was a race against time to excavate it. The news spread, and the madmen ran through the streets of Changsha, calling on people to help with the dig. This tomb is known as Ma Wangdui. At the time, China was in the midst of a major political movement. Resources, money, and manpower were extremely scarce. A proper archaeological team couldn't even be assembled, and awareness of cultural heritage protection was low. So many of the people who helped at the construction site were in fact local tomb raiders. Yet everything that came out of that tomb was a world-class miracle. There was a female body that had not decayed for over 2,000 years. The moment she was unearthed, she looked so lifelike as if she were merely sleeping. The state we see her in today is the result of oxidation after being exposed to the air. There was a bowl of lotus root soup in a lacquer box. After 2,000 years, when the box was opened, the lotus slices were still floating in the broth. But in the instant it took to snap a photo, the slices dissolved into muddy water. There was lacquerware buried for 2 millennia that still shines as if it were new today. And there were 2 silk gauze robes so light and thin that each could be folded into a matchbox. These are all examples of lost Taoist technologies that modern craftsmanship cannot replicate. It was later determined that Ma Wangdui contained 3 tombs. The largest and most luxurious belonged to a woman named Xin Zhui, the lady who remained preserved for a millennium. The smallest and humblest tomb belonged to her husband, Li Chang. Li Chang was a Taoist master who helped the first Han Emperor, Liu Bang, defeat his rival, Shang Yu. The tomb in the middle belonged to their son. The surname Li is one of the most authentic Taoist family names. Ancient texts record that the great philosopher Laozi's original family name was Li. Now, let's look at these lost technologies in more detail. First, the silk gauze robe. In the 1980s, China's top textile research institute was tasked with replicating one of these robes. Their final product was heavy and thick, weighing 260 grams. The original weighed only 49 grams. It was a complete failure. After further study, they concluded that the raw material was different. The original silk came from a special type of 3-sleep silkworm from the Han Dynasty, which produced incredibly fine threads. Modern silkworms are 4-sleep silkworms, and their silk is much thicker. So the Institute spent nearly a decade cultivating these ancient silkworms. Finally, in 1998, they managed to produce a replica weighing 49.5 grams. Close, but not quite, and they stopped trying to shave off that last half a gram. Why? Because the original 49-gram robe included the weight of its collar and sleeves. If you remove those, the body of the robe weighs only 24 grams. It's a complete impossibility. It seems that in addition to the special silk, some lost weaving technique must have been used to make it so impossibly light and thin. Taoists greatly value elegance and charm. Experts now believe these 2 robes might have been Lady Xin Zhui's favorite pieces of intimate apparel. Today, a single robe is valued at $300 million and is a national treasure forbidden from leaving China. There were originally 2 robes. The other one was even lighter at 48 grams. Tragically, in 1983, it was stolen by a clueless thief who burned it to ashes and flushed it down a drain. The second lost technology is the anti-corrosion tomb itself. The Changsha region is very humid. If you bury a steel bar in the ground there today, it will be covered in rust within 3 months. Yet Lady Xinjui's tomb remained intact for over 2,136 years. From the time it was sealed around 165 BC to when it was opened in 1971, not a single water molecule seems to have penetrated the burial chamber. In fact, the chamber was still filled with a flammable gas. The preservation method from a modern scientific view consisted of 3 layers. The first was a thick layer of white clay paste which acted as a waterproof barrier. The second was a half-meter thick layer of charcoal which absorbed moisture. And the third was the flammable gas used to displace any water molecules and also to deter tomb raiders. If not for the multiple witnesses who saw the gas ignite in 1971, no one would believe that the ancients could seal a gas in a tomb for over 2,000 years. It's a great shame that the archaeologists didn't collect more samples of the gas before it all escaped. Even with modern materials and technology, experts admit they couldn't guarantee a tomb would last 2,000 years like this one. The lacquerware found inside looked like they were made yesterday. When they were exhibited in the 80s, many foreign visitors suspected they were modern replicas. They couldn't believe something 2,000 years old could look so pristine. And that bowl of lotus root soup is even more incredible. It proves 2 things. First, Changsha must be a very stable region, geologically speaking.
There couldn't have been any major earthquakes in over 2,000 years or the soup would have spilled. Second, it suggests that China had trade links with India much earlier than believed, as the lotus root originally comes from India. The third and most amazing lost technology is the incorruptible body itself. The forensic report said she seemed to have been dead for only about 2 weeks. People who were present at the opening of the inner coffin said it was covered with a brand new looking bamboo mat, still pale yellow, with the character for home written on it in ink that looked like it had just dried. The paintings on the nested coffins were brilliant, with layers of gold, black, and red lacquer. As they prepared to open the final coffin, a journalist arrived and joked, "I hope there isn't a living person in there." It's a good thing he was there, otherwise the body might have been cremated as a product of feudal superstition. The story goes like this. After moving the final coffin indoors, the team was suddenly ordered to open it that night for a visit from a provincial leader. They rushed to open it and found the body submerged in a brownish liquid. Thinking it was just decomposed body fluid, they drained it all away, saving only 2 small vials. They didn't realize it was likely the ancient preservative formula itself. As they cut through layers of silk wrappings, someone touched flesh that was still elastic. When they unveiled her face, the leaders took a look. A few days later, an order came down: cremate the body immediately. The museum director refused, stating it wasn't an official order from the central government. Just in time, the journalist's report reached Premier Zhou Enlai, and an order came directly from the State Council to protect the body at all costs. Unfortunately, the only preservation method available at the time was to submerge it in formalin, which is why the body we see today looks very different from how it appeared when first discovered. Later, an autopsy was performed. Her internal organs, brain, and tissues were all perfectly preserved. It was truly miraculous. To this day, experts admit that they cannot replicate the preservation techniques used on Lady Xinzui. But even more stunning than the lost technologies were the lost Taoist ideas found in the tomb of Li Chong's son. The first lost idea comes from a text called The Yellow Emperor's Four Classics. For 2,000 years, Confucian scholars claimed the Yellow Emperor ruled with benevolence after defeating his rival Qi Yu. But this lost text tells a very different and much more brutal story. It describes how the Yellow Emperor captured Qi Yu alive. He then had Qi Yu's skin flayed and made into a target for archery practice with rewards for those who hit it. He made a banner from Qi Yu's hair and head and raised it high for all to see. He had Qi Yu's stomach stuffed and used as a ball in a game, rewarding the best players. And he had Qi Yu's flesh and bones minced, mixed with chives, and fed to Qi Yu's own followers. The Yellow Emperor then declared a new set of laws, warning everyone to look at Qi Yu's fate if they dared to disobey. This, the text explains, is called rectifying chaos. It argues that the Yellow Emperor was simply following the way of the Tao. Just as a full moon must wane, Qi Yu's tyranny had to be completely undone. This text, said to be written by the Yellow Emperor himself, presents a raw and unapologetic philosophy of power. The tomb yielded a massive library of lost books, over 120,000 characters in total, which have been compiled into 42 ancient texts. A second lost idea is found in the Mawangdu version of Lao Tzu's classic. We all know it as the Tao Te Ching, with Tao, the way, coming before Te, virtue. But the Mawangdui version is called the Te Tao Ching, with virtue placed before the way. This simple reversal in order represents a huge difference in philosophy. For example, the modern text contains the famous phrase, "A great vessel takes a long time to complete," often used as a kind of inspirational quote about patience. But the Mawangdui manuscript says a great vessel is exempt from completion. Lao Tzu's original meaning had nothing to do with perseverance. It was about letting things be. If you are a great vessel, you don't need to be forced into a final shape. Another example, the modern text says to be bent is to be made whole. The original says to be bent is to be made of metal or to become strong. Lao Tzu wasn't telling us to compromise, he was telling us to be resilient in the face of adversity. The modern Tao Te Ching has Lao Tzu speaking of benevolence and righteousness. This has puzzled scholars for centuries because his philosophical successor, Zhuangzi, despised these Confucian concepts, calling them artificial constructs used to deceive people. The Mawangdui text solves the riddle. The original line only mentions good faith. The idea of benevolence was added later. A third lost idea comes from several astronomical texts. According to a French scientific history of Chinese astronomy, two of these books, the Five-Star Almanac and the Divination by Weather and Celestial Phenomena, contain knowledge that seems almost impossible for their time. The Five-Star Almanac details the orbital periods of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Its calculation for the synodic period of Venus is off by less than half a day compared to modern data. The other text contains names, cycles, and detailed drawings of 29 different comets. To observe and record all of these comets would require at least 600 years of continuous observation. But what's truly terrifying is that the illustrations of the comets, showing the shapes of their tails and comas, match what modern scientists have only been able to see with powerful telescopes. If this discovery had been made in a Mayan ruin, it would be presented as definitive proof of ancient alien contact. In fact, on Lady Xingzui's coffin is a T-shaped silk painting depicting the realms of heaven, earth, and the underworld, which bears a striking resemblance to the famous Rocket Man carving on the tomb of the Mayan king Pakal the Great. The French author of the astronomical book concluded that based on these records, Chinese history must be far, far longer than 5,000 years. And the greatest surprise is that we can only understand a tiny fraction of these astronomical texts. The parts we can read are the orbital data and the comet shapes. But the main purpose of these books was astrology, the art of predicting the future by observing the stars, a practice that has been completely lost. Finally, there were the lost postures. A text called Harmonizing Yin and Yang described 10 sexual positions with poetic names. Tiger's roam signifies the importance of prelay and mood. Cicada's cling suggests a deep embrace. There is also inchworm's wriggle, granary corner, and locust stretch. These are not just graphic descriptions. Another text, The Ultimate Way Under Heaven, a dialogue with the Yellow Emperor, elevates these practices to the highest level of the Tao. The ancient Taoists approached this subject with a serious, almost scientific spirit of inquiry, studying it as a profound path. But after these texts were rediscovered, this part of the content was kept hidden for over 30 years and was ultimately first published in international journals by Japanese scholars in the 1990s.